All right. Is the mic yeah, the microphone's working. Okay. So today, I was thinking just recently that it's usually my preference to begin anything that I do by sort of explaining what's going to happen and realizing that I can't do this with this because I don't even know it kind of is stream of consciousness. And we're doing cover to cover reading the Parinama method. And today the one thing I can tell you is we will read from page starting at 248 with consciousness and science. And we're in chapter 10, which is the seventh hub. And yeah, I think in these, it's been interesting is that I haven't done as much preamble with these for a number of reasons, but one of them being that getting into the reading kind of like does the job anyway. I'm going to move some stuff around here. Okay. But one thing actually that is like out of the, off the page, so to speak, is like that, um, I think that, one of the things about this is, recently I've been thinking about how my understanding of what this methodology is, and what it entails in practicing it, especially moving into like going, I guess like deeper and deeper, ascending more, like whatever the descriptor would be, is that just my caution about doing anything that resembles marketing for this, simply because it is so disruptive. And the idea of this even existing in self-help is, it's like I kind of already understood that this was, kind of like the medical grade self-help. Now I'm realizing I'm like, this is absolutely absolutely like consciousness shifting, which is yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's funny because I just renewed stuff that has to do with the website, the um the parinamamethod.com. And it, in looking at the website, I didn't even look through the entire thing. It's a really nice website. Yeah. Yeah, the woman who did the work on it did a really great job with it. It was a really fun process to work on it with her. But it's interesting too, because actually this dovetails into kind of what was on my mind, kind of about kind of the bigger picture here, is that there was this thing that was like every single thing about the creation of this book was just drawing in all the right people, and people that were extraordinary beyond my capability of like even knowing to wish for them. I did spend a lot of time like thinking about the look and feel of the book, and sort of what like sort of this notion of what it was supposed to be, that felt sort of like directed a lot by just inspiration. And my editor is like a world-class editor. My designer, illustrator, layout, proofreader, the people that worked on the production of the book were absolutely best in class. And then this thing happened that when it came to bringing the book into the world, everything that had to do with marketing was just like not right for it. And it wasn't about the people. Like, this is one of the things where it was like really difficult, because it wasn't a personal thing against the people that were involved in it, because they were all, I mean, it was like it wasn't about them. It was that this thing, whatever this is, just knows what it is. And, and as I've come to really understand this notion of the kite, and that as the adaptations fall away, and the listening and connection with integrity through very difficult process, a very challenging process. But anyway, but like, it's kind of like, well, what's the point of doing this? Is that, well, you get your internal divining rod, you lose the distortion. There isn't a radio, a TV on, you know, people talking, noise from outside. There isn't this thing about, like, what am I supposed to do? This confusion that, like, was so familiar to me about being like, well, what about what these people will say? And like, am I, and the thing about fear, not understanding the difference between fear and like a divining sense that's driving towards greater inspiration, and even shame, the thing about, like, back to, like, what are people gonna think, or not really knowing how to, like, feel my feelings very well. So, like, even so, the tamping down of my feelings really let fear and shame and envy. Yeah, yeah, envy, um and all the shadows, like, really crowd out what I could hear that was just a much more, it's like a quiet, but like, a voice with, like, I don't even wanna use the word conviction, it's just so sure-footed. It's like, but it's quiet, but it's like, it's like this go this way, and back to the kite analogy, it's kinda like, it's like that way. And now that, now with this relationship with it, it is wild, because it isn't a lot of times, I know the quality, the timbre, the tone, like, of it, and following it, and most of the time it's stuff I don't wanna do. Most of the time, it's stuff I don't wanna do. I still, I even fought it. There was something, like a social thing that I was, like, really wanting to do, and it was like, "You're not," and there was this kind of sense of being, like, magnetized away from it, like, it was making everything difficult. It was, I hate to like, sound like this kinda thing, but it was like this thing that was like, "Don't do that." And then in other things where it's like, where I'm like, I like, because I didn't wanna do that. I didn't wanna not go to that. I mean, these are, like, small examples, honestly. Um, yeah, yeah, everything's so personal right now. It's like I'm mindful of, like, what I disclose here to, like, into the void, not knowing who I'm talking to, but, and I don't wanna talk about anybody that would hear, so that's the protection of other people and our interactions. But it's like there's a very strong, and it literally is like, it's super, its outcomes are just like, like, across the board, like, elevating. Yeah, it's not, there isn't a thing where it's like, yeah, it's really interesting, but the interesting thing for me right now is seeing how often it's stuff that I'm like, "Yeah, I don't really wanna do that," but I can feel it's like a very you can too, I mean, it's in you. It's like this feeling of this very particular sense that it's like, "Do this thing," and it's like, "Yeah, but I don't want to," or like, "Oh, and it's like, "No, listen," and doing it, and it's interesting because that very sense has to do with writing this book, which was like, it just created pain everywhere I went except for walking down this path to develop this. Like, it created, like, agitation, anger, frustration, and I didn't wanna do it. I mean, I've talked about this before. I did not want to do this. I still have like, it's actually it recedes more and more over time, but this thing about being like, I really wanted to just have my kind of conventional life, and being like, "Yep, it was not." Yeah, it's just, but the thing is, the conventional life wasn't working. I just wanted it, and I wanted it to work. Like, I was in the wrong place. It was like, "Okay, so I'm good at making money," but, there was so much, like, resentment towards my authentic power. Um, there's so much that it was untenable because I was in the wrong places. I was with people who were, like, really battling out their own, like, internal struggles with really low levels of consciousness, like, really high levels of, like, individual ambition, covering up, sort of these, like, I guess you'd almost call it, like, self-loathing, like, that particular division. So it was really it wasn't it's like I liked it's like the idea of it was like, "Isn't this great?" But it was, like, untenable, and it's important for me to remember that, to be like, "No, it's just this kind of Shangri-La," and it's like, well, sort of, but also it wasn't working. It wasn't working. I mean, one of the things that had happened was that I remember somebody who'd worked for me at a couple of companies. I'd said, "Oh, I'm thinking of going to this other company," and they were like, "No, you've nothing to learn in this space anymore." And I remember exactly where we were, and it was shocking to me. Once again, it wasn't really what I want to hear. I don't think what I did is what they thought I would do. I know that a lot of folks didn't expect this to be what I would do. In fact, like venture capital firms and, like the interest in me waned when it became clear that it was like I wasn't gonna be doing anything that that made sense, in the world that I'd, like, previously, like, succeeded in or whatever. So, yeah. I've no doubt though, I mean, there's just something that's like this knowing that I'm like, "This is bigger than all of that, and this actually it can sustain and outlive it in this particular way." I don't know how, but it just there's a knowingness, yeah, that kinda speaks to that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I think this is like I'm talking about this out loud almost like journaling in a sense, because it's really good for me to strip away um edifice of being like, I walked away from this, like, bright and shining, extraordinarily fulfilling existence. I always knew, and this is another thing, and I speak this like, I really hope that this resonates with you. This sense of being like, I just know that there's something else I'm supposed to be doing, and it's like and it's just it's like and really, it's really inconvenient. It's like, I don't really it's like even though everything's great, theoretically, it's like winning in every capacity that I understood how to win in, um, but also feeling like I was really, like, shorting myself, like, it was really like I was just not accessing and that the following that, like, following towards what is now what it is this fulfillment and this, like, really profound for me, like, this experience that this kind of life that I experience is profound now is, is that it was doing a lot of stuff that it was like this kind of divining rod was like a forcing function on. I needed to basically like close every door and create a lot of pain. And now it's so much more subtle. It's like, so maybe that's why the examples were really low key, is that it's now I can listen to it in its subtlety. I don't need the first comes the whisper, then comes the brick, then comes the brick wall. It's like I do the hard stuff as soon as it's presented to me now. More fucking hard stuff. Oh, yeah, and it's hard, and that goes back to, like, I guess where it started, which was that, initially, like, when I was making the website and I was still really, like, coming out of a framework that was very similar to the commercial world I lived in, which was, like, making this commercial period, that it was like, "Well, I have to convince people this is easy. I have to convince people blah, bitty, blah, bitty, blah," like, and, and even then knowing, like, yeah, I don't exactly know how to do it, and I think and and then, seeing that people were doing this and becoming distressed and that it was just too potent, that, people were, like, in a few pages and they were just like, "Yeah, I'm not okay right," like, it just that I'm really disrupted now. One example I have was somebody that's like, "Well, we can," they pushed out our meeting because they said they wanted to read the book before we met. And then when I met them, they were kind of like shock and awe, and they're like, "I've only been able to read the first chapter," and the first chapter is like, The first chapter. It's yeah, so it's like having respect for that. And it's very much, it like that happened a lot and I was ignoring it, that people were having very strong experiences with this and then, just being kind of left like, "Oh my god." I think I understood that there was something I needed to figure out myself before I proceeded, which was also why there was like a sense of being very soft in the launch of this. Because I did know there was that sensibility, but there was that competing thing about being a person of commerce. I mean, I'd been a revenue executive for my entire career. So as much as I thought I was such a, sort of outsider in my approach, it was still very much in me as far as being like, this is sort of the way of the, you know, whatever. So anyhow, yeah. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm surprised that came up. I really like that though. It's really, yeah. There really is a thing too about being provided for by it that I don't wanna speak to because I feel like it's one of those things that is potentially like, I haven't, like yeah, I don't know how responsible it is to talk about this yet in terms of, like, how this opens up possibilities that are just like, "Wait, what? That's how this works?" And letting go of the idea that I know how it works and how that provides for very practical things, but I don't know, I'm gonna wait on that. We'll see what happens. So, alright, I'm gonna read. So, this is Consciousness in Science. Science! So we're on the 7th hub here, and we're in the basics. It's learning about like what is this hub? Like what's the and once again, next, I'm going to read Consciousness and Science today, and then the next sections are parallax, ambiguity, paradox, and let's see what is on the next page. Yeah, and this is a sort of a friendly reminder of the fact that this book is like an unfolding sort of it has an infinite loop made into it, which is these are all mapping back to chapter 3 in part 1, and that it is all ooh, I'm actually seeing this now. Yeah, like how this kind of loops right back to the very beginning. It's really wild. I didn't know that that was happening when I wrote it. I kind of knew that I was mapping the part 1 chapters to the book, but, like, understanding how this works now that I'm practicing this as the book, reading the book, it's understanding it's like, wow, that's like that really does work this way. Much like when people are like, "Well, I read," people have been like, who finished the book, um, that they're like, "I finished it, what do I do next?" And now it's like, "Well, read it again." Read it again. I mean, this is not yeah. I mean, I wrote it and I'm like, I wrote it from a state, as I've mentioned before, that is going to be spoken of more about accessing the state, um, especially when we get to chapter 12, is that I wrote it, but I wrote it in a state that is very dissimilar to the one I'm in right now. Like, it's when I explain to people the amount of research that I read over 300 books, like countless, in the, I don't know, 100 scientific articles, interviews, all these interviews with, just both people and subject matter experts. And that, I think that because, like, I'm articulate and intelligent, there's a thing that's kinda like, "Oh, sounds like something you do," and it's like, it absolutely is not something that I would do. And to describe, I sit and watch TikToks all day. So, yeah, it's like the illusion that I'm some great intellectual. I'll shatter that one, for you right now, you know? Like, or one or great I guess maybe I'm pretty, like, I don't know if yeah, like, I would say it's clear that I'm a great academic. It's like, no. I was like that, like, when I was in school, I did so much plagiarizing. I didn't know how to write anything. I just would, like, and, or I kind of did, but it was, like, so scrambled, and it was, like, I remember one of the things was, like, you'd be reading in a book in the library that would, like, be there you're doing, like, a research paper, like, their term papers, and that was, like, hell because 'cause I'd wait until, like, the night before it was due, and it's just, like, somehow I pulled it off. I don't think I did, like, great on them, but I remember it would be, like, written like that, you'd be reading it, and it's funny because I think, like, this is all, like, originally like, I wrote all of this, so somebody may do this to me in an ultimate karmic loop, um, like, plagiarize this, which is, whatever. But I remember I would just, like, read what they wrote, and I'd think, like, "Yeah, it's perfectly put. I can't put a better spin on this." So yeah, and the thing was, it was like there was this, like, sort of undefined thing about, like, how much you could actually quote, it's like the suitable, so I was like, "Well, I'm getting shit on by it for having quotes in here, so I'll just sort of drop this in, change a couple words so it sounds a little dummy it down so it sounds like it's in my voice." But anyway, okay, so I'm gonna read The Confession of Plagiarism. Naughty. Yeah. High school plagiarism. Probably was a little in college too, if I think about it. I didn't take many classes though. You to write stuff in college though. So yeah, I guess not. It's all science stuff. Okay, so consciousness and science. Okay, switching gears. Consciousness. This is actually a good section. So let's see if you made this far, you've earned a good section. So consciousness is hard work. Thinking can double the energetic demands on the brain, demands already disproportionate to those of the rest of the body. The brain is only about 2% of the body weight, yet accounts for 20% of a body's energetic expenditure. During a typical day, a human brain alone uses around 320 calories. Add a cognitive demanding task to the day, and the energy consumption jumps by at least 100 additional calories. Spend time learning something new, and that additional demand can double. Yeah, I was shocked by that. I was like, "Oh my god." It's like, yeah, but I mean, it kinda tracks to the fact that it's so exhausting to, like, think. Like, you start a new job, and you're like it's exhausting because it's all new information, new people, new spaces, like that kinda thing, you know? According to scientists, we operate from automatic reactions and reflexes for an astonishing 90 to 95% of our lives. We're adapted towards the efficiency of reflexes. As much as we may like the idea of burning calories, we've biologically evolved to conserve them. There are different kinds of energy expenditure. There's being mentally tired, the exhaustion we can feel after our first day at a new job. Wow. When everything we're doing is new, versus the physical exhaustion after a day of physical labor. It's my experience that mental exhaustion feels like more of a depletion than physical fatigue, which is often satisfying. Yeah, I mean, one of the other things is even, like, after having had an argument with someone, like a really intense argument with somebody, there's, like, that depletion. Yeah, and the other point here, like, so I'd be remiss not to point out that the 90 to 95%, like, working out of reflexes, subconscious and unconscious, that going back to what we're doing here in Parinama with the Tangle is that we're actually evaluating the formation of these reflexes in the form of these adaptations, which are another terminology for reflexes, which are the way that we have just programmed during the specific period of development for the specific facet of our nervous system. It's the adaptations that were programmed as a response to our environment that surrounds us. So those reflexes operate our life. And that's what we're doing here, like bit by bit, like piece by piece, is that we're evaluating these things, bringing somatic practices, especially in the earlier hubs, into the feeling sense related to them, and expanding and, I don't know, becoming more dynamic. Okay. So because thoughts predominantly are repetitive, tedious, and negative, they tend to get a bad rap. We have about 6,000 of them a day. Some say like 10, but most of them have a tendency towards problem identification. So feeling relaxed was not an evolutionary advantage until recently. We now live in hyper-stimulating environments that slowly kill us with stress. Long before there was language or Post-it notes to help us remember, fixation on negativity helped our ancestors survive by assisting in the memory of dangerous plants and other hazardous things by repeatedly emphasizing them. Most worry is repetition of a piece of information our nervous system doesn't want us to forget. So to reduce worry, write thoughts down, make time on your calendar, or use an organization system you trust, and consistently follow through. Break a concern down into actionable items and put a plan in place. If you have trouble following through, this may be why you worry too much. Your brain doesn't trust you yet. Procrastination and worry are linked fundamentally, but you can change this. Yeah. So one of the things too, in terms of writing down, is to journal it, because and it's been discussed in previous sections. The using journaling, um, the value of that being related to, the thing is, like, you're repeating something, so, like, usually a repetitive thought is like, this person did this and this person did that. And it keeps you at the first gate. And one of the things is, like, when you're writing about it, you actually, like, land that first thought and you get to walk through the gate and sort of evolve the thinking and progress it, versus staying stuck in a thinking cycle. I don't care how smart you are. It's just like a thing. It's like, it's just a thing. So just as blood circulates in our bodies, thoughts flow through our minds, and we need them. If you tell your thoughts that they have guaranteed lifetime employment and that you intend to respect them, a more cooperative relationship with them can begin. Consider looking at thinking as a bodily function, such as a kidney processing blood or the digestive system moving food. Your brain is reflexively processing sensory information, including feelings and emotions, to manage your physical survival. Thoughts are important, but not necessarily accurate or factual. They're pieces of information, even through the lens of a belief system, or seen, even. They're pieces of information seen through the lens of a belief system. The best way to tell if something is important or valid is to give it a little time to separate it from reflexive reaction. When we become reactive, obsessive, and consumed by our thoughts, we merge into identification with them. Repetitive thoughts are not necessarily bad. They've just outlived their usefulness as a mechanism for keeping us safe, which is now vestigial and maladaptive. Yeah. And that is a full, yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, if you have the book, if that one resonates, that's a read again. It's from page 248, Consciousness and Science, or watch again. There's a thing because there really is a thing, which is like thoughts, how do I stop them? How do I stop them? And it's like you can't and you won't. And you don't want to because it's just processing. It's processing and it's informed by reflex and belief systems. So even as we begin to soften, loosen, disintegrate, dissolve the tangles, the parinama, these tangles, which is these, reflexes that are informed by circumstances and events of our, early life that create these rationalizations and belief systems, or that we create belief systems and rationalizations around to make sense of them, that inform what we think is reality. And then we project those out into the world responds accordingly, and the knot and the tangle tightens. This is something that once the more parinaming that you do, the more that you do this, it actually reduces. There's just sort of a net reduction of that quality in your mind, like it, and just even the tightness of beliefs and the intensity of like negative thoughts, where it's like that. It's like, and the more you, like that, it becomes malleable and understood and felt, and there's somatic processes to like feel and understand and conceptualize and contextualize and all this kind of stuff. It just, this quality dies down. And the other part of it is just that it's not to like vilify, it's to kind of work with it and understand what it is. And I think one of the things too, actually, that probably could have made it in here is that for many people, one of the really confusing things is like, is this me? Like, is the thought me? Is this, like identifying with the thinking and thinking like, this is me, like the thoughts is like my, like, and this is to do with like identity in each of the hubs, which is like the belief that there's part of us that is like, that like, and I think this is is like kind of where the seventh hub would like take a predominant notion of like identity, would be that to think like, this is me, this thoughts, what I'm thinking, what I think about people, and like my grievances and my problems, and that like, this is what I am. I'm problems, I'm grievances with people, I'm frustrations, I'm, worries, like whatever. It's like, and that's not it. Like, that's, so like, you're not, to see that, because the thing is like, if it was like the, sort of the you, it couldn't see itself. Like the part of you that sees the thinking is this kind of aspect. We'll talk about the emblem, or like the notion of like whatever this kind of eternal aspect of ourselves is, or whatever we're going to call it. But just talking about how the witness, I think the witness is on like actually a page away. So we'll get there. But yeah, a lot to think about there. It was a good one. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much. And I will see you next time. As always, any comments I'll respond to. All interactions appreciated. But just watching is really like, is like ultimately like great. If this is meaningful for you, or you get anything out of it, I'm really happy. So I will see you next time. Sending you lots of love. Bye for now.